Hello, and welcome to the 84th episode of Recluse Horror. This is a daily horror movie review podcast. So just a little background on the project. Back on my birthday in April, I decided I wanted to watch and review a horror movie every single day. I have done so for the past 351 days. So I watched another short film today, and it's from one that I've actually reviewed their work before, but it was before I was doing the podcast. It was when I was just doing text reviews. And I really have to say, although this does have some pretty some pretty strong problems with it, the level of just the level at which this particular production company has progressed since the first work that I have reviewed of theirs all the way down to this one is incredible. Now, you've heard from me before, if you've listened to this podcast at least, when I've reviewed the work of the same production company, a lot of times you run into the same problems over and over and over again. People just, they don't improve upon anything specific. There's all these problems, and it continues to be a problem all the way down the line, every film that they do. Between 2012 and 2018, these people have basically, I was just floored by this. It's a completely different piece. It's a completely different type of piece, and really, like, I haven't even said the name of the movie or the production company, so I'm going to go ahead and remedy that and cut myself off. So, the name of the production company is Freeze Frame Films, and the film that I'm talking about today is Stay Hidden from 2018. Now, there are some definite problems with this, which I may or may not have a spoilers section for this one specifically. It depends on how I feel when I get later into this review. I don't chart any of this stuff out in advance. Really, when I do the podcast, not very often unless it's something that I've reviewed from previous that I'm talking about. But yeah, I may decide to do a spoiler section. I'll make sure to give you time to get away if that's not something that you want to hear, if you just want to watch it. But This was released just 2 weeks ago. So 2018, obviously, Stay Hidden. And while, like I said, this does have some problems, the level of improvement that I've seen over the different pieces of theirs that I've watched is really incredible. It's not something I see all the time. A lot of times, you just get production companies and they have to always use the same equipment and they're always making the same sorts of stories. Each of the three that I have seen from Freeze Frame Films has been different than the last one, and they've all improved. So I'm not going to talk about the other two. I don't have time tonight to talk about the other two movies that I reviewed previously in text. If I do an episode on that, in the future, definitely I'll make sure to I'll make sure to put in the show notes that it's Freeze Frame Films, so that you can maybe search it or something like that. I don't really know why that would help, but regardless, if I do talk about those in the future, then I will try to do that sometime after I stop doing daily episodes. But yeah, so the first one that I watched was The Secluded House from 2012. Then I watched, it was about 6 or 7 days later, I watched The Penfield Incident from 2016. And then today, 120 days later, I watched Stay Hidden from 2018. Now, the first two films, it was clear that, it was an incredibly low budget. The actors were probably all friends and people who were, donating their time essentially to act in that. And, I don't know about the rest of the production company, whether they were people who were, sort of owners of the project, or even if the actors were. But the level of progression between those and this one is really astounding. And I know I've said that like 15 times, but it's incredibly impressive. I've never seen anything like it from any film company that I've done any work, that I've reviewed any of their work. So Stay Hidden is it's kind of hard to synopsize. Basically, there's a girl and she's running from a thing. That's as much as you can really say without spoilers, and that's pretty much covered in the first 10 seconds of the film. So the camera work on this, the quality of the film and the cinematography are leagues ahead of either of the other two movies. Although the other two movies do a good job of covering for the lack of incredibly high production value cameras and stuff like that, stuff that you just wouldn't necessarily have access to. They wrote their stories to basically cover for those problems, which is something that if you've listened to this podcast. I really like it if you're really taking into consideration what you have, what resources you have, and try to build a story based on that. It seems clear to me that they did that at least in some measure on both of the other two. This one honestly feels like pretty much a full version, like no qualms about anything. It is 100% like just a movie in that sense. So this one is of a camera quality and a production value that they need to make no excuses for their equipment or for their resources. The locations are interesting. There's basically, I would say, 3 separate places where they go in 2 separate locations. It might be 3, and they make one look like it's supposed to be in the other location. It's very common to do that in filmmaking. And the effects it looks like they've gotten somebody on their team to do practical effects. I don't believe they had somebody in the other 2, at least, that I've seen by them, that did practical effects. There does seem to be some practical effects in this, and they're pretty good. They're better than, a lot of the stuff that I've reviewed recently, that had practical effects. The design of them too, not just the quality, but the design of them is pretty interesting. The acting, it only has one actor. It's a female actor who, she doesn't really have any lines, but she does a great job her emoting. Like, I never don't buy her facial expressions and stuff like that. Really, on a technical level, there's no place where this fails. Okay, so I had to take an emergency phone call right there, so I definitely lost my train of thought on everything that I was talking about. I think I was pretty much done with what I was talking about before. So the cinematography in this one, hopefully that isn't literally what I was just talking about. Cinematography in this is pretty good. There's some pretty interesting, camera angles. There's a lot of really good camera angles, actually. And there is some very good looking lighting in it as well. Much of it is natural lighting, but again, as I've talked about before, natural lighting is sometimes very, very hard to control, especially if you don't know how to do so. So it looks very good. And basically the other 2 films that I saw don't really have anything like that. They don't really have what you would call cinematography in the broadest sense. So basically both of them, they use, both of the other freeze frame films, they use, a sort of like found footage sort of angle. So in one of those, it's literally people that are exploring something and, using a hand cam. So there's no cinematography in the sense of like, this is a really good framed shot and you're going to hold here and then you're going to pan over to this thing. It's all like supposed to be naturalistic to like the people operating the camera, just like trying to film as they're seeing stuff. The second one, and I won't spoil the reason or anything like that, but it is from basically just a fixed point camera. So there is no real cinematography in terms of, again, any kind of camera motion. It's all in one specific place and from one specific like point of view, essentially, that that itself doesn't change. Now, the distance of what's being filmed and all of that stuff, that can change, and a few other things. But this is the first one from freeze frame films that I've seen where they're actually like able to move the camera and use the camera. There is one moment that is sort of a problem with the cinematography, that in one particular scene, they do that thing that I talked about with a different film maybe a week or two ago, where there's something at the edge of the top edge of the frame that kind of emphasizes the shakiness of that specific point. There's something that creates sort of a straight line right at the top of the film, and so you just keep seeing the camera shakiness, even though it's barely shaky. It just emphasizes that. But it's nowhere near as bad as the other film that I was talking about that had that problem. And at least the angle that this one is pretty. In the other one, it wasn't even a good angle, so. That wasn't a freeze frame films thing. That was a different production company altogether. So I guess at this point, I should talk about the problems with the story, and I guess I'll start off trying to do that spoiler free. And if it turns out that I need to, then I guess I'll throw a spoiler warning and give you some time to get to your phone to turn this off if you don't want the spoilers. So the story is not very strong. I think this is the weakest aspect of the film. The production value is all pretty good, really impressive considering, if you actually consider the source here. So this lead actor, again, it's pretty much the only actor in the film. She's basically running from this thing. So the title of the film is Stay Hidden. She's not hiding, she's running. And there is a considerable, there's quite a difference between, trying to stay hidden and trying to run from something. That seems like a really kind of weird detail. They could have named this anything as far as I know. I don't think they had you have to make a film, a contract saying you have to make a film with this title. And if so, I still would have written a different movie. But yeah, so the title doesn't really make sense based on what's happening. The other thing that happens, and I'm trying to figure out a way to say this basically without spoilers. So basically the thing the way that, okay, I don't really think there's a way for me to say the thing that I'm trying to say without spoilers. So before I get into the spoilers, the other thing that I'm going to mention about the story aspect of this film is basically just that there isn't a whole lot that's explained. Now there doesn't necessarily need to be a lot that's explained in this, but it is sort of ambiguous. You never really find out exactly what's going on or why, or basically anything that's going on, like any explanation for what's going on. Films don't always necessarily need those, but this particular one I would have been interested to know the answer to that. It is a short film, but in some ways it kind of feels a little bit more like a teaser for a longer project, which again, this could be one of those pieces where they're trying to pitch to somebody. They could be using this as a demo reel to try to pitch, this is what we're capable of, this is what we can produce, in which case the story is not really necessarily the biggest focus of those. They're basically trying to show off their production skills, and I would say that it's very successful on the production skills level. A lot of what I've seen is a lot worse, and considering where they started with this, it's incredible, or at least based on the projects that I have seen of theirs. So at this point, I guess I'm going to go ahead and throw on the spoiler warning. If you would, if you're interested in seeing this and you don't want me to spoil it for you, go ahead and turn this off now. I'm just going to sort of babble through some more time to let you pull out your phone and get to your podcasting app and try to turn it off. Or go to YouTube and press the pause button and go away. Goodbye. Okay. So the real problem of this, and I think this was the thing that had me the most confused, or the most, like, the title is problematic again. She's really running. She's not hiding. But the real problem here is the behavior of the thing that's in the movie. So, again, and this is full spoilers. You know how I am about spoilers, so I just want to make sure I'm gonna full spoil this particular part. So, the creature, there's a creature, basically, that's after her. It's a pretty good-looking creature, actually. As I kind of mentioned before, the effects are good. But this particular creature does not seem to work. It doesn't seem to behave in a way that makes any sense for what it is. It does not seem to be a terribly intelligent creature for any reason. And it basically, the way it goes, she's running from the thing. You don't see it immediately. But she's running from the thing. And then she tries to get in her car, and she turns on her car. She's not, I assume it's her car, a car at least. She's not able to start the car. So she, like, sort of gets up and wanders. Again, not running at this point. Just kind of wanders into what appears to be like a barn or something like that, or some kind of auxiliary building or something. I don't know. It's a non-residential space. She wanders in there with no speed or really any, like, urgency at all. And then she goes, they have this really good moment, and this is a cinematography moment, where they show her walk out of the frame, and then they keep the frame on at the angle that it was before, before she walked out of the frame. They leave it there, and then you hear her get attacked. It's actually pretty effective. I did like that. I thought that was a very clever use of, like, oh my god, what's happening, and, like, trying to build tension for the audience. And then after she appears to be attacked or whatever, she sounds like she's attacked. Oh, and the sound effects right there are really good too. But they pan over to, I believe they pan over to her, and they show her, and she's been attacked, and they show the thing for a minute, and then it, like, blacks out. Then they pick back up on a shot of her, and she's in a different room, so she's clearly been, like, dragged off or something like that. And she's just coming to, and she kind of, like, looks around, and she doesn't know where she is, and then she realizes, like, the place she's in is fucking terrifying. And actually, that's another really good moment for the production value, is the look of that particular room when they make the full reveal of the room is amazing. It's really cool. But so the second time, when she wakes up, it attacks her again, and it just, like, as the thing comes and goes to attack her, it cuts, and that's the end. So, as far as I can tell, there's no reason why it couldn't have just from the very first time it attacked her. I understand, like, it's possible that maybe it has to take its kills or something to this particular room if it's going to kill something. I don't really know why that would be, but again, that could be a story reason that we just don't get because this is a short film. I'm willing to accept that, but I don't understand why it drug her into the room and then left her there, gave her enough time to, like, be unconscious, wake up, figure out where she is, which could be any amount of time, really. I mean, it wasn't light and then dark or anything. It doesn't seem like a lot of time has passed, but at least minutes have passed. And then she wakes up, and then it attacks her again. And I'm not really certain why that would be. It easily could have dragged her off into the room while she's unconscious and killed her. Unless there's some reason why it can't do that we don't know. But it just seems like it doesn't seem to have any particular intelligence. It doesn't seem like it's malicious necessarily. It honestly seems like it's either gotta eat or it's gotta kill for some reason. Like horror creatures, sometimes they don't have to eat people, but they do have to kill them for whatever reason. This particular one, I have no idea why this was done in 2 stages, other than to show that room, which is awesome, but that could have been shown another way. That could have been done another way, where it shows them, the thing dragging her off, or it shows her black out, or, I don't know. There are a fair number of ways that you could have shown that without implying that the creature attacked her, took her to a place, left her, and then came back. I feel like it just feels like they wanted what I think may have happened, and I'm just totally speculating, is that they couldn't find a way to show in a neat way. They couldn't find a way of showing the thing dragging her off. Like the thing didn't have the capability of actually dragging her and, looking realistic or looking cool, or even, they may not have had a way to film that. It also could have been that this location is in a completely different building than the one that they show. And I honestly think that's probably the case, because this building, that doesn't necessarily look like it would be the interior of a different room in that building. Either way, whatever the reasoning is, they could have easily shown her blacking out and then coming to, and it's still taking her, or maybe while it's black, have some sound effects of her being dragged, and then when she opens her eyes, she's just in that room. There's a number of ways that it could have been done, but regardless, it just seems like it's a 2-phase attack for no reason, the way that it's framed, and that's really my only problem with it. Again, I think it is like a production thing. The more that I think about it, they just didn't have the capability of doing what they needed to do. I do see how the creature, it would be hard for that creature, the way that it looks, to realistically drag her away, or even not even realistically, but in a way that doesn't look kind of silly. I would imagine it would be hard for it to do that. So I do understand that, but it just seems kind of weird that it leaves her alone and then comes back for no discernible reason. It's not trying to trap her there. It doesn't seem to have any other reason, like maybe they need a certain level of fear. That's something I've seen in some horror movies. There's no known justification for why that happened. Now, that's like not a huge criticism of it. And again, it's probably production based. I think it is, the way they did it is close to, the way that I would have thought they could cover for something like that. And I do appreciate that. But as I watched the movie, just as I actually watched it, and before I had any time to, basically dissect it and figure out why it just seemed a little weird to me. I was just like, wait a minute, why would it do that? And that was my immediate thought, and I couldn't come up with any reason why it would. And then I'm like, okay, there's probably a production reason. But that thought didn't come to me until way later. Yeah, that's really the only problem that I have with this. I think that's the major problem. And again, it's probably covering for something that just couldn't be achieved. So I totally get that. And again, this is astounding. Like the level of professionality, the level of, the cinematography. They're actually clearly thinking about shots, or at least they're very, even if it's just day of, they're thinking of the shots, they're framing the shots well. Other than that one scene where it emphasizes the camera shakiness, there's not a ton of shakiness to the rest of the camera. Nothing moves too quickly, which is something I've seen sometimes where if you're not used to it, you'll just whip around the camera and not move it very smoothly, and it looks really funny when they do that in the wrong places. Yeah, I mean, this is as good or better than probably half of the short films that I've seen. And it's better than some of the feature-length films that I've seen too, quality-wise. So really impressive stuff. If you're interested in freeze-frame films, or if you're interested in really any kind of horror movie stuff, I would definitely suggest that you add them on YouTube. Go to it's one of the 4 channels that are movie-based that I actually do subscribe to. For a specific actual reason, I don't subscribe to a lot of film channels, because I want to make sure that the things that are coming up in my search aren't just from production companies that I've already seen stuff from. I do try to do a lot of work from different short filmmakers and production companies and stuff like that. And sometimes when you add those are the only things that come up anymore. So this is one of like 4 film channels that I actually have. I've, on some level or another, I've liked all 3 of the ones that I've seen. But yeah, definitely check out their stuff. It's really impressive, especially if you watch something from, a few years ago and then watch something now. Apparently, this is incredible. So I would suggest that. Also, the Penfield incident, which is the one from 2016 that I saw. It's like the second one that I saw. The opening moments of that film, I have probably watched 6 or 7 times. The very first scene, there's this song that plays, and I won't ruin the whole thing, but it is like one of the most fun moments that I've seen in a horror movie. It's like a great montage, basically. And it is so much fun. It's one of the best things that I've seen in a horror short film. So definitely check out the Penfield incident if you're looking for something that, like, it's definitely not horror related, but it's a really cool couple of minutes of film. They licensed a song to do it that is a pretty well-known song if you're from a certain sort of background or if you grew up in a certain time period. So yeah, I don't know. It's just really fun. And definitely check out this one because, again, the quality of this is so high. I really would recommend this, especially if you've seen any of their other stuff, just to see how far they've come. Again, for the 700th time, it's incredibly impressive, and I can't wait to see what other stuff they have coming up. I try not to go back to, for the same reasons that I was talking about before, I try not to go back to the same group of people too much, but I always seem to stumble upon these people. The first time I did it, I just picked something at random and I was like, okay, I'll watch this. The second time, I think I specifically wanted to see if some of the problems from the first one were solved in the second one that I saw, which it did. This one is a whole different ballgame. This is completely different. I had to look up on my phone to make sure that this was the company that I thought it was when I saw that it was Freeze Frame Films. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's the one, that did those 2 that I watched before. And sure enough, it is. And it really, like, if you didn't tell me this, I would never have guessed it. I would have guessed 600 other production companies that I've seen stuff from before I picked them. It is really astounding. Okay, I've repeated myself ad nauseum 100 times because I was really excited about that, and I'm still really excited about that. Well done. Seriously, great job. I can't wait to see what you guys have next if you're listening to this, which I'm assuming you're probably not, but still, super great. That's going to be my episode today. This is way longer than it really needed to be. Thank you for sticking with it. I just get really excited about this stuff. It's so uncommon to see people really able to keep working towards something, with short films and, like, see this level of improvement over this short of a period of time. I mean, the first one that I watched was from 2012. It's 2018. And in 6 years, they have done more than I have seen people who've been working in the field for 10, 20 years. As far as their progression, their equipment, their sophistication, the whole thing. It's just great. If you liked the show, despite my repeated everything and my babbling and all of that stuff, the best way that you can help out the show is by sharing it, either with someone that you love or someone that you think would be interested in the show. If you would like to share it with someone and they don't use the same platform as you do, or if you don't like the platform where you found us, we are available on YouTube, Player FM, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, and pretty much any podcatcher out there. Or you can reach out to me on social media at Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or you can email me at reclusehorror@gmail.com. So yeah, I think that's pretty much my entire episode. Yeah, have a great night. It's a weird one, but yeah, have a great night.